Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I meal prep for basically the whole entire month of January. So a lot of the fresh elements I need to keep remaking every week, but I really like to batch cook and freeze things in my freezer cubes so that this way I don't have to be cooking all month and I can kind of use up everything that I buy at the grocery store. This really helps me eliminate food waste, it saves me a lot of time in the kitchen, and it keeps my meals really simple. I like to eat a very high carb, low fat, starch solution, plant-based diet, so this definitely helps me with that. So the first thing I'm going to be prepping is a big batch of lentil dahl. So I like to keep this really easy. I just am putting some garlic and onions at the bottom of a big pot, and then I add my spices. I'm going to be adding some mustard seeds, turmeric, and some cayenne. And then I just saute these spices with a little bit of water. I really try to focus on low oil or oil-free cooking, and you could just splash a little bit of water and it does the same thing as the oil. You definitely don't need that in your cooking. So once these spices are nice and fragrant and the onions have cooked down and the garlic has cooked down, then I'm going to be adding my red lentils. This lentil dahl is one of the easiest things to make, and it makes a gigantic batch, and I love to freeze it in my super cube so that this way I could just pull it out all month long for either a lunch or a quick dinner, and it's ready to go. I'm going to be generously seasoning this with salt and pepper because this is going to be a lot of lentils. Fun fact, black pepper actually helps to activate the turmeric so that you get the full benefits of it. Turmeric is a great spice for anti-inflammatory purposes. Once that's all cooked up, I'm going to be adding some drained and rinsed red lentils. This is an entire pound of red lentils that I'm going to be making. And then I'm going to be adding water. I always eyeball my water measurements when it comes to cooking lentils. I just feel like I can get a sense for how they cook. I cover them with water. I make sure that there seems to be enough liquid, and then as things cook, you could always add more, but you can't take any out. So I like to start with less water, and then you can always add more. I'm also going to be adding a can of coconut milk to this, and that's going to give it a nice creamy texture. So I have not posted a video in quite a while, and that is because I spent most of 2025 pregnant with my third baby, and I did have some health complications with that pregnancy toward the end of the year. So my goal for this year is to just really get back on track health-wise and eat nice, simple, clean meals and nourish my body, and make sure that I'm enjoying my time in the kitchen. So to go with this, I really like to make some fragrant rice. I just add some cumin seeds in my rice cooker with my rice, and it makes a very yummy fragrant rice. And then all of my leftovers go in these super cubes, and I freeze them, and I can just pull them out all month. I really love some fresh components to all of my freezer meals because that's what makes the food seem like it didn't just come out of the freezer, and you could kind of change up some of the things you make with all of the fresh elements that you could add on top. So I'm making two fresh elements right now. I'm going to be making the bruschetta and also cauliflower tabbouleh. So since they have a lot of similar ingredients, I'm just going to be chopping everything up and adding it to my different Tupperware containers. So the first thing going into the smaller Tupperware container, I'm going to be making bruschetta. So I chopped up some garlic, and I have some garlic also in the bigger container for my cauliflower tabbouleh. So yeah, I haven't really had a lot of these big cooking prep days since probably last summer because of my pregnancy. My swelling was so bad that I really just couldn't be on my feet. So I tried to batch cook when I can, and luckily once the baby came, I had enough food in my freezers to last me for about a month and a half before I had to cook again. So that was really great. Really get to share the journey with you guys because of how sick I was. So now I'm very happy that I could get back in the kitchen and share with you guys more of my freezer meals and how I prep for our everyday life. So I like to do my prepping on Sunday. Every Sunday I kind of do a little simple mini prep where I'll prep like cut veggies and fruit and lunches for my husband and my kids and kind of set aside what we're going to have for dinner. But once a month I like to do these big preps so that this way I can just pull stuff out of the freezer for the rest of the month. Now next for the cauliflower tabbouleh, I'm going to be cutting up some cucumber, and I'm cutting these really mini. So if you had one of those choppers, that would be great, but I enjoy cutting vegetables. I find it very therapeutic, so I'm just hand cutting these. I first had cauliflower tabbouleh back when they used to sell it at Trader Joe's, but then they did away with it and I haven't been able to find it again. But it was so easy to make and it makes such a huge batch that I feel like it's much easier to make it at home anyway, and you know exactly what ingredients are going in. So next I'm going to be ricing some cauliflower. If you could find already riced cauliflower, that would save you some time and a bit of a mess, but I just get the whole head of cauliflower and I chop it. I probably could have done this in my blender as well. I just didn't think about it until after. So I'm just finely ricing this cauliflower. So a little bit more about my diet. So I really do love to eat starch solutions and to do my 50-50 plates. So that's 50% of my plate is filled with starch and the other 50% of my plate is filled with non-starchy vegetables. I find it really easy to eat that way. It's very fulfilling and it helped me lose a lot of the baby weight and the water weight from my pregnancy, from all of my pregnancies really. And yeah, I just really feel the best. I feel very energized. I wake up in the morning and I'm not groggy and I always feel full. I'm never super starving and my meals are really satisfying and I know everything is really healthy that I'm eating, so I really love it. If you want me to do another video specifically about the starch solutions and 50-50 plates and all that, just leave a comment down below and I'd be glad to share what I've learned. So now I'm just going to be cutting up some parsley and that's going to be going in my tabbouleh. And then I'm going to be cutting up some basil for my bruschetta. So it does take some time to be in the kitchen cutting this stuff, but I only have to mess up this cutting board once and then for the rest of the week, everything is just prepped and ready for me. So to the tabbouleh, I'm adding a little bit of vinegar. You can use apple cider vinegar if you want. I just have regular vinegar. And then I'm going to be adding some lemon juice and of course seasoning. And then you're just going to give this a good mix and let all the flavors kind of meld together in the refrigerator. And this stays good for a few days, definitely. If you wanted to make it in smaller batches and make it multiple times throughout the week to keep it fresh, you can. But this is something that I'm going to be remaking at the beginning of each week. Now for the bruschetta, I'm just going to be seasoning it. And this was my first batch of bruschetta I made, and then I went ahead and made like a bigger batch later in the week. So those little things you can just like keep prepping, but you'll have all the ingredients on hand. Adding these fresh elements to your freezer meals really makes such a huge difference, because then you feel like you're actually eating something bright and crisp and fresh, and you can change up the same meal that you've been eating over and over again without really having to put in a lot of work and recreating something completely different. Okay, so next I'm going to be prepping my greens mix, and I really like to have this on hand just as like a base for any of the bowls that I eat. So since I am eating 50/50, getting those non-starchy vegetables in is really important, and just having them at the ready really makes a huge difference. So for this salad mix, I really like to add romaine, purple cabbage, and arugula, and I like to mix that all together, and that's my little salad base. So it's so easy to grab a handful and have this cleaned in the fridge and then just add it to any of my meals. So for all of my greens, I like to chop them up nice and fine and then add them to my salad spinner, get them nice and clean, and then I add them into my Tupperware, and usually I'll line the Tupperware with a paper towel so that this way it keeps all the moisture out, and that's going to keep everything really, really fresh as well. I've also been pretty addicted to my mandolin lately, especially for shredding cabbage. It becomes so fine. I also use it when I make my kids their veggie tray for the week. And the little pop of color from the purple cabbage and the peppery arugula really makes the salad blend something else. It doesn't feel like you're eating just a bland salad. They're just like a really nice mix of greens that go with pretty much anything. So I love having this in my fridge ready to go. Another thing I've been pretty addicted to lately has been pickled red cabbage. So I just take some of that shredded red cabbage and I add water and vinegar and sometimes a little bit of salt, and I just leave that in my refrigerator, and it pickles up so nicely, and it's just such a fun pop of color and flavor to add to any dish, and it's really yummy. So here I'm just prepping some carrots, and I'm just gonna mandolin them and keep them there. I like to put these in my air fryer sometimes, or just eat them as a snack or as a chip if I have some hummus to dip in. It just makes it really easy to have them on hand. And again, I love the purple color. I've just been living for eating a variety of colors. Sticking with that color theme, I'm going to be making some butterfly blue pea flour rice. This rice is so magical because it actually changes colors when you add an acid. So these are butterfly blue tea flowers. So I steep them first as if I was making the tea, and then I use that tea water to make the rice, and I also stick the flowers in there. And then I just steam the rice as normal, and then you'll see what a beautiful blue color it turns out. And the fun thing with butterfly pea flower tea is that when you add lemon, it actually turns like a vibrant magenta-y pink. So you can use that and mix it with lemonade to make like color changing lemonade, or you can put some of the pickled cabbage on top of your rice, and the rice slowly turns a hot pink, and it's very fun. So once the rice is done cooking, I pick out the flowers from the very top, and then you mix all the rice together and it gets very nice and blue. Doing this and eating colorful food that I'm excited about makes it very easy to not eat out and to just eat my food at home, because when I know I have something so fun, even if it is just color changing rice, it makes me want to eat at home and look forward to my home cooked meals, because you can't get anything like this at the store. The next thing I am making are some different flavored hummus. So I finally found a great recipe to make homemade oil-free, tahini-free hummus. One of my kiddos does have a very severe sesame allergy, so I don't like to have any of those ingredients in my house. So here I'm making a basil pesto hummus. So I start the blender with some basil leaves, garlic, lemon juice, and some almond butter. And then I blend that together until it forms like a nice base. And you can either add a little bit of aquafaba or ice water when you blend your chickpeas in, and that is going to give it that nice creamy texture. So having these hummuses on hand are really good because they also double as dips, they double as spreads, they double as sauces if you want to thin them out. You'll see later I use this particular basil hummus to make like a creamy sauce for chickpeas. So they're very versatile and they last for the week. So I'm very excited that I can now make my own homemade hummus. So now I'm using the same method, but I'm going to be making a beet hummus just because I like the color and I really like beets. So I'm starting with my garlic, a little bit of aquafaba, my almond butter. I'm going to add the beets in here and then some lemon juice. And then I'm going to blend up the base before I add my chickpeas and finish with some ice water or more aquafaba. So now I'm going to show you some of my meals that I made from all of this prepped food so that you can see what the meals look like. So the first meal is some tempeh bruschetta with pesto pasta. I used chickpea pasta with my pesto hummus and topped it with bruschetta. This is the creamy Marry Me sauce. It's kind of like a spin-off of the Marry Me chicken. So again, like I said, I remade some of that bruschetta mix and now I'm going to be adding it to a frying pan. And I'm just going to let those tomatoes wilt down, and then I'm going to be adding some of that pesto hummus as well as sun-dried tomatoes and spinach and just make it a nice creamy sauce. And I'm going to freeze this in some super cubes so I could pull it out. For my meal, I am going to add chickpeas and serve it over rice. And then for my husband, who actually is not plant-based, I will just add his with some chicken and serve that over rice. So that's an easy way to modify meals to both of our different diets. I like to make one base and then I just switch out the protein and serve it over a common grain, and it makes my life a lot easier when everybody's eating different foods. And here is my lentil dahl all plated up. I plated it with a little bit of rice and some of my cauliflower tabbouleh, and that I had so many days. Here is my butterfly blue rice with some beet hummus. I have some pickled cabbage, my salad mix, and again, just some tempeh that I had cooked up. On this day, I decided to make a wrap, so I used some of my beet hummus and I put that on a tortilla. And then I'm going to be adding some of my blue rice, some pickled cabbage, some cauliflower tabbouleh, kind of everything in there. It's so versatile and all the stuff blends really, really well together, and you can kind of change it up based on what you want. And no meal takes more than 5 minutes to prepare, which is the nicest part about having all of this prepped. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know if you like it and you want to see more videos like this. And I'm planning to have much more content this year. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.